Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by my good friend and esteemed colleague, Jeff Howe. Of course, we're talking about Texas, Ohio State. No need to bury the lead there, but we're going to break it down as only Football Theory can. Jeff and I talking about what we believe are some of the most important keys to the game for this huge matchup between Texas and Ohio State. Before we dive deep into it, though, let's thank our sponsor, one of our sponsors for Football Theory, our good friends over at Duck Camp. Yes, Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Texas, Duck Camp builds the best in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics. Duck Camp gear is ready for football season and hunting season and every season in between. Get out there and stay out there. Hook 'em. Shop duckcamp.com. That's duckcamp.com. You can find a lot of great items over there. I have a ton of the Duck Camp items that even have a color that's really close to burnt orange. I've actually had Longhorn fans confuse it with actual Longhorn gear. It is that close to burnt orange. So go check it out at duckcamp.com. All right, Jeff, let's dive into it. We can start on offense. We can start on defense here. Got a bunch of those. I think we should start on the defensive side for Texas right now. Texas versus that Ohio State offense. I feel like there's a lot of compelling keys to dive into on that side. And the one I'll start with is the one that really just stands out to me when I rewatch the Texas-Ohio State game from last season in the playoff. Texas played a ton of too high shell coverage, right? Deep, almost like 58%, close to 60% of the time, they were playing too high shell coverages, which was a little different because last year they were actually a 55% single high team. If you look at it, they played more predominantly single high coverages, but not against this team. They wanted to take away that, obviously, that vaunted passing game of theirs, and they wanted to win the numbers battle in the passing game, and they did a great job of that because Jeremiah Smith had his worst game. In order to do that, though, you leave yourself a little bit vulnerable in the box. You got to play with a lighter box or an even box. Not a problem when you got NFL caliber D tackles like Texas had with Broughton and Alfred Collins, and before that, Sweat Murphy actually probably had the best defense against the run with a light box in the last 2 years. So a big test for this interior D line with all these new pieces: Murad Watson, Travis Shaw, Cole Brevard, Hero Canoe. All these new pieces will be tested immediately because if you're Ohio State, you got to test that light box or even box and see if you can win in the run game a little bit.
The D-line rotation is big for me, Rod, because I think it might take Kenny Baker and PK some time to kind of figure out, okay, which guys work best together. Some guys may have big performances that maybe you're not expecting to. Some guys maybe that you're expecting to have a big performance, it might not be there just because I can't stress it enough. First games are rough. A first game against a legitimate national title contender, it's not a recipe conducive to success. So what the D-line rotation looks like, what it looks like on early downs, what it looks like on passing downs, what it looks like on standard downs, I'm fascinated to see how Kenny Baker and PK work that thing. But if I'm Texas, the thing I'm preaching to my guys in the front, both at the first and second level, being assignment sound is paramount in this game. And where I'm looking at that, kind of the pressure point to me, Rod, really is Ethan Burke. It's whoever is that edge opposite Colin Simmons, because last year, man, the one thing you could bank on with this defense, you could bank on a lot, but if you're power ranking things you could bank on with the 2024 defense, man, Barron Sorrell is going to be in the right place every single snap and do his job to the best of his ability all the time. The consistency factor with him was off the charts and was huge for this defense. This is a game where you want to be gap and assignment sound and see if those Ohio State running backs can make a play. Again, you're not playing against Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson. See if C.J. Donaldson can make Anthony Hill miss in the hole. See if James Peoples or Bo Jackson, one of those other running backs, see if they can make a play in space, if they can make a play one-on-one. Because you know what? At this point, if I'm PK, if I'm Johnny Nansen, I trust Anthony Hill or Anthony Smith or Leonga Lafau or Trey Moore to make that play. So I think being gap and assignment sound, making sure your run fit dang near every snap, Rod. That to me is one of the critical things in this game that I don't think we talked about a ton leading up to this, but the closer we get, I'm like, man, the run fits, they got to be clean and they got to fit dang near every snap. You almost have to be perfect in this game to have the advantage over Ohio State.
Yeah, to your point, just because you got 5 guys in the box doesn't mean you just got 5 guys in the fit. You could have 7 guys in the run fit, but only 5 guys in the box, to your point, as long as they are sound in their gap assignment, if you will. And to that point, speaking of gaps, I wouldn't be surprised to neutralize Texas' advantage on the edges if they play a little bit more 12 personnel, add another gap, add another guy in the box, try to exacerbate a potential advantage with the numbers game in the run game. And also, they believe that their strength of their O-line, Montgomery, Hinsman, Shabola, the interior, matched up against Texas uncertainty in the interior of their D-line, they believe they might have an advantage there. We shall see. I think that'll be a big test for Texas. Another key here, look at Will Howard last year in the way that he attacked that Texas defense, Jeff. Most of his damage done in the short to intermediate area between 5 and 19 yards in terms of the depth of his targets. I think it was 73% of his targets, 75% of his completions, 65% of his total passing yards came basically between 0 and 19 yards. Only 2 deep attempts, and I think both of those may have been to Jeremiah Smith, if I'm not mistaken, and not a lot short either. I mean, not a lot behind the line of scrimmage. So where he's going to try to do his damage if you put those 2 deep safeties. Texas last year played a lot of inverted Tampa looks, like with an inverted defender, so they could keep 2 deep safeties to keep the top on the defense, but also allow somebody to creep down to that second level to defend some of those intermediate inside cuts. They're going to play a lot of that inverted look, basically that 3 high inverted defense. They're going to play a lot of that potentially in this game. They probably played as much of it as I've seen in 2024 against Ohio State. And I think it was because of where the vulnerability would be when you play with those 2 high defenses.
To your point, Rod, we're sitting here recording Football Theory, and this will publish 2 days before kickoff. That's how many deep shots Ohio State took in the Cotton Bowl. Passes of 20 yards or more down the field, they only took 2, and they missed on both of them. And to your point, yeah, if you're Texas, we've said this ad nauseum, and it's worth repeating again, Rod. Nobody try to be the hero. Jeremiah, if I'm Dwayne Akina, Johnny Nansen, PK Sark, anybody with any skin in the game putting together this defensive game plan, Jeremiah Smith is not going to beat me. He's not going to be the guy that makes a play. I'm not going to get greedy or arrogant and leave him one-on-one, and that be the difference in the ball game. You know what? And this is no disrespect to Carnell Tate, because Carnell Tate had a really big game in the Cotton Bowl. Emeka Ibuka did too. G. Scott came up big. So I'm looking at Carnell Tate. I'm looking at Brandon Ennis. I'm looking at Quincy Porter and Max Clare. Those guys in that short and intermediate game, especially for an inexperienced quarterback who you probably want to get in a rhythm. If you're Ryan Day, you may not want to take a ton of deep shots in this game and risk rattling your quarterback. Because, again, what do you need to have deep shots? You need time. This Ohio State offensive line, they've got good pieces. They haven't played together in those spots enough, at least enough to the point where I'm not sure I want to trust them against maybe the best pass rush in the country more than maybe a couple of times in this game. So that to me is going to be the chess match. But I think Max Clare and Carnell Tate to me, Rod, are the 2 guys that I think in that short and intermediate game, they can feast. And the matchup within the matchup, they're going to, I know this is going to happen. They're going to try to test Leonga Lafau and Anthony Hill in coverage against Max Clare. And why wouldn't you? He's one of the best tight ends in the country. So if I'm Ryan Day and Brian Hartline, that's the matchup I want to exploit. We know the 2 Texas linebackers I'm talking about are great players. But you said it, Rod, for years, and I 100% believe you. Every linebacker to an extent is a liability in coverage. It's the path of least resistance that we're talking about.
No doubt. And to that point, honestly, that's why I said they may surprise Texas a little bit and go some 12 personnel, because then you can force Texas either into 40 personnel and force that linebacker matchup on Max Clare. And so I don't know. It just throw it out there to try to slow the game down a little bit. One other thing on defense for Texas, they need to have a plan, Jeff, for the exposed defender in the secondary potentially. I've talked about this. I don't know if it's going to be Grayson Littleton they tried out there at the nickel. I'm not sure if it's Gilbo at the corner, then they put Wardell Mack in somewhere at the nickel. Maybe they put Gilbo at the nickel, then they put Kobe Black at the corner. Maybe they put 3 safeties out there, Derek Williams, Taft, and Jelani McDonald, and go big nickel. Whatever they do, that the Ohio State offense will test whether that whoever is at that nickel, Kobe Black, or if whether those 3 safeties can actually cover. So either way, Texas needs to have a plan when Ohio State decides they want to try to expose that one question mark defender in the secondary who's an unproven commodity. Because that will happen.
Yeah, this is a game, Rod, we always talk about in the big games. What do you want to do? You want to try to break tendency. And we know Texas is going to bracket on Jeremiah Smith. Again, if I'm Brian Hartline and Ryan Day, I want to make it as tough on Texas as possible to try to bracket him. I want to move him around a bunch. You look at Jeremiah Smith last year in the Cotton Bowl, 38 snaps, according to Pro Football Focus, 38 snaps he was on the field in a passing situation. Only 8 of those snaps he was in the slot. I wouldn't be surprised, Rod, if that's closer to maybe like a 60-40, maybe even a 50-50 split with Jeremiah Smith getting in the slot compared to outside, especially, God, the unknown. Like, we know a little bit about Carnell Tate. Actually, we know a lot about Carnell Tate. We know a little bit about Brandon Ennis. The one receiver we don't know about is the true freshman Quincy Porter, who, maybe Ohio State just, to borrow a line from Nick Saban, they just crap out first-round wide receivers. Like, it's unbelievable the run they're on with wide receivers. Quincy Porter may be the next guy, and he's apparently had a really good camp. So if you could trust him on the outside enough to where you can kick Jeremiah Smith down inside, maybe get him in situations where it might be one-on-one with Grayson Littleton. If I'm Ohio State, that's what I try to do. So if you're going to break tendency, putting Jeremiah Smith in the slot more than 15% of your snaps would probably be a good way to do it.
Yep, that's good stuff. All right, let's jump to the offensive side of the ball for Texas and talk about some keys there. I know you got one that's been top of mind for you.
Man, it's got to be pass protection. It's got to be, and really, really early down success for Texas, Rod, because where you don't want to be, especially on the road, you don't want to be in predictable to go distances on third down. Like, that's just the death sentence for your offense. And I look at Ohio State's havoc rate in the Cotton Bowl. Now, typically, if you're around like 17, 18% havoc rate in a game, you're doing really good. Ohio State's havoc rate in the Cotton Bowl, Rod, 27.9%. That means on almost a third of their snaps, they're getting a sack, tackle for loss, forced fumble, interception, pass deflection. Like, that is entirely too much havoc. And I say it boils down to pass protection because when you look at the Texas run game in the Cotton Bowl, I know that forgettable goal to go possession in late in the fourth quarter. That's what we all remember from that game. But you adjust the rushing yards, the rushing attempts and rushing yards to take out sacks, Rod. They were 25 carries for 88 yards. That's not great, but that clip is good enough to win you the ball game. And Tony Hills, I go back, I credit Tony Hills with what a great point he made on Coffee and Football on Wednesday. I want to get your take on this, Rod. I feel like Sark is a different coach than he was a few years ago. And if he can do this, if he can be patient enough early in the game to be content with those 2 to 3 yard to 4 yard runs, knowing that if you just keep chipping away, those 2 and 3 yarders are going to be 6 and 7 yarders later in the third and fourth quarter. And those 6 and 7 yarders are going to be 12 to 15 yarders. I feel like Sark is patient enough. Can Texas establish the run and stay out of predictable to go distances to where you can keep running the football?
I agree with you. I think, honestly, that's ideally what I want. And if Sark can run the ball, they're going to win the game. And it's not even a question about it because the playbook is wide open for you. So I agree with you. But I'll say recently in these big road non-conference games, like the Michigan game, it looked like you ran the ball well, but you actually really didn't.
Right.
Because if you take away the Ryan Wingo reverse, I think the other day he was averaging less than 3 yards per rush. Mm-hmm. If you take away and he was your leading rusher with that reverse of 55 yards. So I'm with you. I agree with you. You want to stay out of those basically third and longs, deep, those situations where it's a butt naked drop back and everybody knows you got to throw the football and they can pin their ears back. But I would say I think Sark is going to try his best to stay ahead of the chains in other ways if the running game isn't working. What he had last year was Jaden Blue and Trey Wisner in the flats, those swing screens, those swing routes. I don't know if he has that. Maybe he's got something else in his pocket. Maybe it's the wide receiver screen game that he works, but he needs to have a plan to supplement the running game if it's if the traditional running game ain't working.
If you're gonna go to the short game, Rod, this is where I think Jack Injuries is going to be massive in this game. If you look at him last year, he had a big year at Cal. If you go look at his targets last year, 70.5% of them were in the short game. Zero right at the line of scrimmage up to 9 yards, 43 targets, 40 receptions, 396 yards, and 98.4 Pro Football Focus grade. When we talked about the short game with Quinn, it was all about the RPO, those glances, those slants, getting it out quick to the perimeter. I don't know that you've got like a bona fide screen game guy right now that you can trust. We know Wingo can do that, and we talked about that. That's part of his game, but I don't want to pigeonhole Ryan Wingo. I want the whole Ryan Wingo package open. I don't just want to limit him. So if you're going to go to the short game, I think Arch is best friend in this game. And Arch has talked about, listen to Arch all throughout the offseason. I think the guy he's been most excited about has been Jack Injuries. I think right now when there's a critical down and distance and it's 5 yards or less and you want to throw the football, I think your two options more often than not are going to be either DeAndre Moore or Jack Injuries.
I love that. That's great stuff. All right, another key that I think is going to be big in this game, and Sark has admitted it multiple times, even on the Stampede with Mac Brown, is the battle of adjustments, right? Sark is a master at game plan and preparation, actually one of the best. Very few, I think, in college football, period, actually game plan and prep as well as Sark does. We know that because of these big non-conference games, right? But both Bama games and the Michigan game. But the battle of adjustments, that is where, if you look at second half, since Sark has gotten here, second half scoring, third quarter scoring, fourth quarter, that the battle of adjustments is where he needs to evolve as a coach. And he's gotten much better. As a matter of fact, he has actually talked about how teams break tendency so much against Texas because it's such a big game that it's forced him to throw out a lot of their prep and planning because they always show something different in game than they show on film against Texas. And he's damn right about that, because in big games, as we talk about, you got to break tendency to win them. Texas is always a big game. So that's what I'm watching this game, because Matt Patricia, he has really no idea in terms of how Matt Patricia is going to attack him. There's not a sample out there, much like the matchup last year against Michigan with Wink Martindale. So by the way, he just annihilated that Wink Martindale defense, but he was the aggressor. And I think that's the key, is to force that other coordinator or play caller to react to you and have to adjust to you. That's why I think he's going to come out aggressive, because he'd rather err on the side of aggression rather than let me feel out Matt Patricia and then Matt Patricia set the tone on him. I don't think he's going to allow that. So that's why battle of adjustments is going to be big for Sark here.
I think about one with the team and then another with personnel, two matchups that I've seen Sark take advantage of that I think he's going to try to do again. One, you go back and look last year. Now, a lot of it's going to be dependent on how much do you trust the running backs. And this is where Christian Clark may be a factor in this game, because I think he's probably the closest thing to Jaden Blue that Texas has in the backfield right now.
Niblett.
This could be one of those where if you throw Ryan Niblett, because you'd say, well, it's predictable that you're going to throw the ball with Ryan Niblett's on the field. It's game one. There's nothing predictable about what you're going to do yet. You don't have any tendencies yet with Ryan Niblett on the field. But I think as good as Sonny Styles is, again, back to our point, Rob, when we talk about the Texas defense, every linebacker, even a linebacker as good as Sonny Styles, they're a liability in coverage to an extent. Getting Jaden Blue on Sonny Styles last year was a matchup Texas took advantage of. I'm not going to be surprised whether it's Niblett or Clark. Maybe it's even Trey Weiser or C.J. Baxter. But I think the backs on the Ohio State linebackers, as much as Sark uses the backs in the passing game, we may see running back passing game concepts, Rod, and things that we haven't seen in a while, or we haven't seen period from Sark. Because usually in these big non-conference games, when he's had all offseason to prepare, he goes into his bag really early and we see something special. So I think he's going to try to do that. And then I go back to the 2023 game against Alabama. Yes, Caleb Downs was a true freshman, but think about how many vertical shots they took that were kind of layered concepts, where you got maybe a go, and then number one's running the go, and then number two's running a post, and you got to make that safety decide at the last second. Every safety, when they get in conflict, they've got that split-second decision to make, and it may not always be the right decision. You know what? As good as Caleb Downs is, he can't cover every part of the field. So if I'm going to attack, I want to do it with bunch formations, kind of those layered concepts, those two-man routes, those three-man routes, and make Caleb Downs make that last-second decision and see if he's right.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that too. And I do think he's going to take some shots. That's just in Sark's nature. I'm starting to feel more like he's going to unleash Arch, because that's what he did with Quinn in these big games. He unleashed Quinn on Alabama both times and did the same thing with Quinn against Michigan. Matter of fact, we were longing for those Quinn performances against other teams. I think you may get that again. I know we're up against, so quick note here. Shout out to my man CJ, because he's been putting this out there for 2 years now. They should attack Igbinosun, the corner. 16 penalties last year. You need to double move that guy early and often. And you need to take shots at him just to see if he's cleaned up his technique. He's a good player. He's going to play in the league, but he's grabby. He likes to grab, and he's out of position at times. You got to test that, and Sark's known to do that. Another thing I'll throw out there, last year versus Ohio State, multi-motion plays worked really well. That's a play when you have at least 2 players in motion prior to the snap, or a player motioning multiple times before the snap. You averaged 11 yards per attempt and 8 yards per play on multi-motion plays. Targets to motion versus Ohio State last year, really good. You were over 10 yards per attempt. 33% explosive play rate. You had 3 explosive plays when you were targeting a player who was in motion prior to the snap or at the time of the snap. When you look at empty reloads, that's when you start out empty, nobody in the backfield, reload the backfield, or quasi-empty. Jaden Blue against Sonny Styles. Go back and look at it. Guys, half of his body is outside the tackle. He's only got 1 foot that's behind the tackle. That's a quasi-empty formation in those situations. Texas last year, 2 touchdowns, 1 explosive play, 2 first downs. They were really good when you looked at empty reloads and quasi-empty. Sark wanted to spread them out and did a really good job of that. That is also something to watch, especially if they're going to be running a lot more 3 high. Don't forget about some of the more extreme formations too. Quads, 6-0 line formation. I know he didn't run it last year, but in 2023 was really effective. And 21 personnel versus 3 high to pull them out of that shell disguise has worked really well for Sark in the past, if they're going to go with a lot of more 3 high looks. So just throwing it out there too.
Yeah, maybe not 6-0 line, Rob, but I do think unbalanced looks are something to look for from Sark in this game. And those Sark signatures we talk about, all the stuff you just talked about, if I'm Sark, I want as much of that on first down as possible, because first down, it's not a predictable down. The entire playbook is open. So if you're in a situation where the down and distance indicates you can dictate the terms of the game, if I'm Sark, I want multi-motion plays. I want bunch formations. I want empty formations. I want all of the signatures that make a Steve Sarkisian offense special. Use those in down and distances where you can dictate the terms of the game.
Yep, I agree with that. Good point about the unbalanced too. Anything freaky to pull the 3 high out of its disguised shell. All right, before we get out of here, let's thank another sponsor of Football Theory. Good discussion there, Jeff. Let's thank our friends over at Advanced Pain Care, courtesy of a message from 2 legendary lifetime Longhorns.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
For what it's worth, Rod, both of those guys are going to try to do Archie's going to try to do what both those guys do. Both those guys are 1-0 in their careers as a starter against Ohio State.
Oh, that's good. That's a great. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but you're right. He'll be trying to do it, and hopefully.
Colts 1-1, but Colt got the last one, so there we go.
Hey, it doesn't matter. I like that. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Jeff, for all the great acknowledgement and expertise. Great stuff as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, always doing a great job. He's the real MVP. And thank you to all of you guys out there for watching and for listening, and to our sponsors, duckcamp.com, and our friends over at Advanced Pain Care. For Matthew, for Jeff, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.